We're now at the Hermit Woods Winery in Sanbornton, joining on our Lakes Region wineries. And joining me today are the two responsible for this great winery, Bob Manley. Welcome, Bob.
Thank you.
And Ken
Hardcastle. Thank you.
Nice having you. You've got a great spot here, and I know all our viewers are going to enjoy touring all of these. So let's go on in and take a look at your winery. We're now in the tasting room at Hermit Woods, and this has quite a lovely atmosphere. I feel like I'm back in California. It's you've got a little bit of everything here. Why don't you tell us first kind of how you got involved in having a vineyard and winery, because everyone has a different story.
Sure. Actually, you mentioned California. California has a big place in the start of this winery. My wife and I spent 11 years in California, and a lot of our free time was spent going up and down California, visiting all the little wineries. And we would look for the wineries that were off the beaten track so that we could get an opportunity to actually meet the winemakers and meet the owners of the wineries. And we learned an awful lot about the wine experience in California through doing that.
Now, with the vineyards you have, how many? I think you indicated you initially just planted them for your own enjoyment.
That's right.
And have you expanded, or how many do you have?
Right now we have 120 vines. There's 8 different varieties. They're all French hybrid grapes that are well suited to grow in this climate.
Survive the winter is the key.
Right. So, and many of these grapes are grapes that other wineries in New Hampshire would also have in their vineyards as well. This is our first year of being able to harvest. It's the 4th year for the grapes, and it usually takes 4 or 5 years to get to a full harvest. And so we'll have our first estate wine from those grapes this year. Yeah, available next year in 2012. But the majority of wines that we make come from local fruits that we get from local farmers and growers and pickers in the area.
Well, that's interesting, because I wasn't aware until I was looking into, some of the wines you have, and they all sound very, I'm used to the normal wines that you would have, the reds and whites, but here there are all sorts of apple, rhubarb, pear, blueberry. I mean, it really...
To grow grapes here is challenging. They're challenging with molds and fungus and pests and that sort of thing. And so oftentimes people use a lot of sprays to try to contain that, to try to get better yields. It's a real challenge. Now there's a whole bunch of fruit that grows really well here without any sprays whatsoever. There are blueberries that grow, there are blackberries that grow, there are rose hips that grow. So I'm experimenting with all sorts of different things, and we'll just stop and end up foraging for them or contact with people that have fruit in their yards. And then I'll use sort of what I know from winemaking techniques, classic winemaking approaches to those fruit. So everything's done in whole fruit, everything's done in a style of making a red wine or a white wine with some finesse, but it's done with the fruit that grows right here.
So it sounds like one of your primary roles is the winemaker.
I am the winemaker.
You are the winemaker.
No doubt about it.
I mean, that's obviously my passion. Right, I mean, I'm just really, there's so much stuff to ferment. I just, every day there's something new. And it's great.
It's also, we have an exciting program that really Ken came up with called Hermit Shares, where we invite people who visit us. We've gotten to know a lot of local people who know where all those blackberry patches are and those raspberry patches are, and who have great apple trees in their yard that just go unpicked every year. So we created Hermit Shares, and we invite anybody who can provide us fruit at the time that we need it and of the quality that we need. And in exchange for that fruit, we'll give people Hermit Shares that are good for purchasing wine here or whatever they'd like to purchase here in our winery. And what it allows someone to do who comes in with their fruit is they can turn their fruit into Hermit Shares, which then they can come back a year later and buy the wine that is actually made from their fruit.
Yes.
Does it take a lot? Because I'm sure some of the viewers hearing that saying, well, gee, this is a great idea. I'm going to try it. I have raspberries or whatever.
It doesn't take much. It's easy. A lot of people, just like putting up some jars of cucumbers as pickles or something like that, you can put up a gallon, 4 or 5 bottles of wine. from whatever you have in excess around. Or someone says, oh, I've got all these peaches that just came ripe, and you can make a peach wine.
And we've accepted, I mean, we've had folks come in here with 10 pounds of blackberries, and you freeze blackberries when you pick them, so you come in with 10 pounds of frozen blackberries. If they fit our winemaking schedule, that's all you need, 10 pounds.
What about rhubarb? Does that fall in the category?
Yeah, rhubarb. I'm always in the rhubarb. Is a great, it's got oxalic acid in it, so it's this great mouth-watering component to add some of the pieces that you need in a wine to make it engaging. And Chardonnay grape, Riesling grape has acids in them that make those wines so enjoyable. And rhubarb on its own is very intense, but blended with other things, we made a peach rhubarb, which was just wonderful because peaches are aromatic and they're they're a wonderful juicy fruit, but they don't have much in the way of acid when they're picked ripe. So by combining them with the rhubarb, you get those two things, and it turns out delightful.
Now you're tasting, what seasons are you open typically? From when to when, and when do you do tastings?
Well, as of right now, we're brand new. We opened in June of this year for the first time, and we had our tasting room open until the end of October this year. And next year we're planning a similar schedule. We're going to open on Memorial Day in May, and then we'll stay open until sometime toward the end of October again. In the summer we are open 5 days a week, and in the spring and fall we'll be open just weekends. But we are growing. We started with about 350 cases this year, and next year we have more than doubled that. We're looking at probably between 750 and 800 cases next year. So we'll expand our hours accordingly as we grow, and also we're expanding our connections with local wine shops and restaurants, and that's what we're going to focus on this winter while our tasting room is closed, so we can make our wine available in more locations around the state.
So folks that come, they can purchase, I'm sure, your wine here from you when you're open, but then...
We're also, I've advertised on our website that we will be open by appointment all winter long. So if there's a lot of local folks who have grown to like our wine, if they let us...
We're open last Saturday. We had a group
If they call us up and we're around, we'll be happy to open our winery to sell wine at different times of the year.
Oh, that's great. So this is where it all happens, what makes the great wines. And you're probably the first one that we've been to in the Lakes region that actually has some of the oak barrels too. I know many of us, if you've been out to California, that's all you see are the big oak barrels. Most of the ones we've seen in New Hampshire have been the stainless steel. But tell us a little bit about what you're doing here, and also what this is. I don't know what that is.
All of these containers will have these airlocks in them. So as temperature changes or as fermentation takes place, there are gases, there are volume changes. And this will allow those gases to go out, but not allow any air or other things to go in to the container. So it's a one-way blockage format. The containers we used are kind of dependent on the wine that we're making. So to make classic red wines out of Vitis vinifera grapes, Cabernet, Syrah, the rest of it, there's a perfect synergy with the oak and those grapes. The oak does two things. It liberates some tannins, which is a natural preservative. So it allows those wines to age before they go bad. And that aging helps smooth them out and to bring out the characteristics of the grapes. So by putting them in an oak barrel, they get the extra tannins from the oak.
So the oak is more aging versus stainless steel isn't aging for...
Correct. The stainless steel is just an inert container, so there's no aging that takes place. And one of the other really critical things about an oak barrel is that this is actually allowing evaporation to take place. So about every 2 weeks to a month or so, I pour another bottle of wine into this. Oh. And that wine is evaporating out, and the flavors get concentrated in there. So it's the water and some of the alcohol that evaporates off, and so the flavors get concentrated over time in an oak barrel. So when I make the wine, this is a 200-liter container. I'll make 220 or 240 liters, and over time I'm putting in that extra wine, the same wine, to top it off.
So how long might you keep it in?
That's all based on taste.
I was going to say, you have to taste
It's a really tough. It's a really
oh,
tough part of the job.
yeah, it is,
I've got to
it
come
is.
here and taste it, and
that's just right, or no, we'll...
exactly.
Oh, okay.
And each grape, each fruit takes it a little different. I used some oak with some honey wines a few years ago, and they had plenty of oak in about 2 weeks. Cabernet, you can go years in an oak barrel, and you still won't taste that oak directly, but it'll add a really nice nuance to it.
Now, on the stainless steel, those don't have to age. They just sit there for a period of time, and then it's determined. You taste test those as well?
Yep, taste test those all the time as well.
Are you
Aging-
a taster, too?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's an important part of the job.
Yeah.
Actually, aging occurs in the stainless steel, and actually wine ages in larger volumes. So the smaller the volume, the slower the aging process. So we're aging more rapidly now in the larger containers, and a lot of the fruits that we're making, a lot of the wines that we're making will spend anywhere from 4 to 6 months to a year in stainless steel before getting bottled and served. And that's part of the aging process. And then when they get into the bottle, they'll continue to age. Yeah. Fruit wines don't age as much, don't require as much aging as grape wines. Although Ken has done some really interesting experimenting with bringing some of those fruit wines into the oak and beginning to age those as well. So we're kind of excited to see where we can go with aged fruit wines if we handle them right.
Mm-hmm. See, that's what's really exciting. Bob and I love Cabernet, Syrah, Carmenere, just different classic red wines. We like big red wines. The grapes that make those cannot survive the winter here. You can't grow Cabernet here. You can't grow Syrah here. What you can grow are these hybrids, and they just are a different type of grape completely. There are some dark fruits that grow really well here. Elderberries, blackberries, blueberries. And so what we're doing is handling those in a way that you handle classic red grapes, and applying those techniques and trying to push those into those ranges. And we have a blueberry wine that goes through what's called malolactic fermentation. It's a secondary fermentation that converts some of the malic acid into a softer lactic acid. These went through malolactic fermentation before they go into the oak barrel. The blueberries go through malolactic. Then they go into this oak barrel. And the same fruit process has done the same thing. We squeeze them all by hands, we press them, we ferment them with French strains of yeast.
So you squeeze them with hands, you don't get in and stomp them like...
No, we squeeze them. For handling bigger volumes, we have a crusher destemmer for handling the grapes. You can actually just dump the whole lugs of grapes in there, and they're split, and the stems are winnowed off to one side.
And we have a hydraulic press as well for
Right,
pressing the larger quantities, right.
Well, I think it's interesting that you're experimenting with all these different. I've never seen so many different types of fruits and things. I saw a tomato wine, which I've never heard of. So I think it's great. I think our viewers will enjoy coming out to taste the grape wines as well as the fruit wines.
Yeah.
And
one of the things we did this year that was really exciting for our guests was we had I think it was probably the first barrel tasting in New Hampshire. Barrel tasting is a very popular thing to do for folks in California, and that's where we learned about that experience. So as soon as we got some barrels, we got our barrels of wine. We invited our guests to come down here after tasting our wine in the tasting room. They could come down here, and Ken actually serve them wine right out of our barrels.
Right out of the barrel.
And it allows people to get a sense, because one of the most amazing things about learning about wine is understanding what happens when you taste the fruit, and then you taste it after it's fermented for a week, and then you taste it a month down the road, and then you taste it 6 months down the road, and you see how that fruit changes when you introduce oak and when you age it and you do all these things. So this allows somebody to come in and actually taste a wine early in that process, and then in a year they'll come back and this wine will be for sale on the shelf, and they'll be able to taste it again and maybe get a sense about how wine changes with age.
Oh, I think that's a great idea. I'm going to have to come back and do one of your barrel testings.
We'll have another barrel tasting next year.
Yeah,
we'll
that's
have,
unique. It's
we'll
something a little different.
Barrels.
Yeah. Well, I think you've got a great place out here, a nice atmosphere, and it's a pretty drive out here, so I think our viewers will enjoy coming out to sample your wines and fruit wines and meet you and learn. It's very interesting, and I think it gets people excited about what you can do and change.
Well,
so
we're so excited about it. It's infectious.
yeah, it is, and I think you're it's unique with your Hermit shares. So those of you out there who have a big crop and don't know what to do with it, call Hermit Woods, talk to them. They may be interested in having some of your fruit. So, well, listen, we enjoy having you on the show and look forward to coming out again.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having us.